Hello and a very warm welcome, viewers. You're watching Policy Watch with your host, Kruti Mishra. Public Wi-Fi hotspots at a large number of cafes, grocery stores, restaurants and other places around India could become a dream come true in the near future. In a bid to provide public Wi-Fi service, the Union Cabinet has decided to launch a Wi-Fi access network interface to unleash a massive Wi-Fi network in India. With this, public data centers will be opened across the country. The public Wi-Fi access network interface will be known as PM-Wani. The proposal will promote the growth of public Wi-Fi networks in the country and in turn will help in permeation of broadband internet, enhancement of income and employment, and of course, empowerment of people. The public Wi-Fi access network interface was first recommended by the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India in 2017. And for more on the topic, I'm joined by Mr. K. Ramchand, Member Technology, Digital Communications Commission, Department of Telecommunications, and Mr. Mahesh Uppal, Telecom expert. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, both of you. Mr. Ramchand, let me come to you first. Well, to ensure seamless digital connectivity at affordable rates, the Union Government has approved a proposal to set up public Wi-Fi networks across the country. Take us through the highlights of PM-Wani scheme.
Union Cabinet approved PM-Wani scheme day before yesterday. This is, the full form is Pradhan Mantri Wani. Wani stands for Wi-Fi Access Network Interface. This scheme envisages proliferation of public Wi-Fi hotspots across the country. We all know that for providing a telecom service, a company has to take a license from the Department of Telecommunications, and for providing telecom services, they pay what they call as license fee, which is a percentage of the revenues they earn. In this scheme, government has approved zero license fee. That means the service providers providing internet services through these public Wi-Fi hotspots through this scheme need not pay any license fee to the government. Moreover, they need not even take any license. They just have to register with the Department of Telecommunications as Wani providers and then provide the service. Let me explain three important components of this scheme. There are three entities in this project. One is called PDO, Public Data Office. This term has come from the earlier days. We used to have PCOs, public call offices, across the country, along the streets, in pawn shops, small shops, and people used to make calls from those PCOs. Similar to that, we are envisaging that these public Wi-Fi hotspots through these PDOs, public data offices, will be able to provide access to the internet services for all the citizens of this country. The second most important entity of this scheme is PDOA. This PDOA means Public Data Office Aggregator. The responsibility of this person or this company is that he aggregates a number of PDOs into one and then has some equipment which does some accounting functionalities, authentication, authorization of the customers, etc. This person needs to register with the Department of Telecommunications. PDOs need not register with the Department of Telecommunications. The third important part of this project is the app provider. You know, to access public Wi-Fi, even today in airports or in big hotels, we access through an app. An app will be installed in the mobile. The app provides the access to the nearest public Wi-Fi hotspot, and then through OTP authenticates, does a sort of KYC, know your customer, KYC of the customer, and then registers the customer into the database. The next time he logs in, he approaches the public Wi-Fi hotspot, he is authenticated by the PDOA, who maintains a database of the customers as well as their accounts, and then provides the access. The PDOA has the accounting of each and every customer. There is a third entity, there is a fourth entity in fact, that is called the central registry. The central registry has a database of all the PDOs, PDOS, and the app providers. Right now, to start with, we have entrusted this job to CDOT, our R&D unit of DOT, which will maintain this central database, which is called the central registry.
So, all right, those were four players and their functions. But moving on, Mr. Uppal, according to TRI, in most major economies, for 50 to 70% of their total usage time, mobile users use Wi-Fi technology to communicate. However, in India, this figure is less than 10%. Tell us about the significance of PM-Wani scheme.
This is absolutely correct. In India, as you are also alluding, the usage of Wi-Fi is very, very small, and we don't have Wi-Fi hotspots anywhere near what our population or size would suggest. We, in fact, don't even have 1/100th of the hotspots that we should have. In fact, we had hoped that we would have close to 50 lakh hotspots by the end of this year, and I think we are close to 1 or 2 lakhs. So it is something where there is a gap, and this thing is the PM-Wani scheme will certainly try and fill that gap. However, we must recognize that Wi-Fi hotspots, where they are most useful and active, are also economies where mobile charges are very high. Data rates are very high. In fact, in the US, the average data rate per GB is roughly $5. In the UK, it's about 1.5. In India, it is $0.1. So the incentive, the encouragement to use Wi-Fi is reducing quite a bit. So, for example, there was a time when you visited somebody or you went to an office, you asked them for the local Wi-Fi password. Now you don't, because now your own mobile phone has sufficiently cheap Wi-Fi. So we must be realistic about what the Wi-Fi usage can be in a country where the data rates are extremely low.
Well, that's a very important point that you're making about the price. Now, Mr. Ramchand, I understand that in 2018, when TRI had floated the test model, it noted that the users should be able to buy sachet-sized internet plans that varied between 2 rupees and 20 and can be used anytime. Help me understand, how will this entire system work?
Yeah, I mean, that scheme still applies. They can purchase small value of vouchers and then start using the internet in any public Wi-Fi hotspot. As Mr. Mahesh was telling, yes, the data rates have come down, but it is not only the data rates that determine the utility of these Wi-Fi hotspots. The advantage of having Wi-Fi hotspot is it takes off the load from the normal radio network of the telecom service providers. So that, see, the spectrum is purchased through auctions, and then the telecom service providers install a lot of BTSs, as they call the towers, to provide the services, voice as well as data. The spectrum that is used between the towers and the customers is purchased through auction. And because of the limited quantity available, the quality of the service sometimes may change depending upon the number of users contesting for the same spectrum. Now, in case there is a Wi-Fi hotspot, that many number of customers log on to the Wi-Fi hotspot and they don't use the spectrum, and that spectrum would be available for providing services to other customers. So, technically, I would say that the quality of service improves in the normal radio network of the telecom service providers, and moreover, those who latch on to the Wi-Fi hotspots, they get higher speeds. We get speeds of even from starting from 2 Mbps to 10 Mbps, and depending on the Wi-Fi hotspot, it can go even up to 100 Mbps. So technically, the customers would be getting good quality of services. Data rates are concerned, the PDO, the Public Data Office, who provides the Wi-Fi services, he takes backhaul bandwidth from a regular telecom service provider or an internet service provider. Because he takes the bandwidth in bulk, he may get it at a cheaper rate from the telecom service provider and will be able to provide the service even to the customers and then probably make a profit in the bargain.
And in fact, when we're talking about the significance, Mr. Uppal, COVID-19 pandemic has mandated delivery of stable and high-speed broadband internet services to a large number of subscribers in the country, including areas which do not have 4G mobile coverage. We're not looking at any specific deadline right now, but certainly creation of this kind of infrastructure, particularly in rural areas, would be a tough task.
No, I think there is no doubt, as Mr. Ramchand mentioned, the fact that we are now liberalizing this service and we are allowing all kinds of small entrepreneurs to offer it will certainly make things cheaper. But let me again mention one data point for you, that 96% of India's data goes on 4G networks. So this is important in the context that you mentioned, which is that areas where there is no 4G, because this will be a challenge. But there is no doubt that it is an improvement, that this is something that we needed, but we must be realistic about our expectations.
All right, let's talk about another important aspect, which is of employment creation. Now, Mr. Ramchand, while it's too early to predict the numbers, the move will need a huge workforce to manage the telecom network, to handle the surge in load due to additional data usage as a result of free public Wi-Fi. Tell us about the kind of employment opportunities that PM-Wani scheme will create.
Yeah, as Mr. Mahesh said, a lot of entrepreneurs can start these public data offices. Very small businessmen in their local area can start this Wi-Fi services by taking the bandwidth from the local internet service provider. But before answering that, I would like to go back and then answer on the proliferation of these Wi-Fi hotspots in the rural areas. We are expecting that these public Wi-Fi hotspots would be spread across the country, especially in rural areas. The mobile density, the telephone density in India overall is around 85%. The urban tele-density has crossed 100%, but the rural tele-density has remained at around 55 or 60%. But as you all know, Honorable PM has announced that all the 6 lakh villages will be connected on fiber in the next 1,000 days. So fiber will be reaching all the rural areas. That means the backbone of the telecom network is reaching it. Now, using this backbone, any entrepreneur in the rural area can set up PDOs, and a bigger entrepreneur can aggregate the PDOs and provide a setup for the PDOA for setting up the authentication, the accounting, the voucher management system, etc. And then this will increase the employment opportunity, especially in semi-urban and rural areas. Not only that, another advantage is recently government has announced very liberal regulations, rules, guidelines for work from anywhere. Work from home is permitted. Now we have permitted work from anywhere. So employees working for different companies, especially BPO companies, they can stay in semi-urban and rural areas and continue to do their work from home. That probably will reduce the load on the urban areas. That's my take.
On rural areas,
Mahesh,
right, sir? Yes, sir. Mr. Mahesh, you would like to add on that?
Yes, I broadly agree. I think the main point that I would make is that there are some regulatory issues that we need to address in this. And one of them is this point that also Mr. Ramchand alluded to, but maybe needs more clarification, which is that currently there is no obligation for the telco, the larger telecom players or the ISPs, to offer wholesale rates. Now, the wholesale rates actually are mandatory in most regulatory regimes. If you went to Europe, or a reseller has the right to a wholesale rate. Now, here the difficulty would be that, or could be, not would be. I think one needs to be optimistic, and this is a very positive step. The difficulty would be that this is a service that would be in competition actually with the telco itself. So it is something where we need to ensure the interests of the smaller PDO. I think we have addressed the issue of authentication. We have very brilliantly addressed the issue of security, etc., etc. I think those are very good things we have done. But I think we need to do a bit more work on the commercial attractiveness of this business to both sides. And I think currently that is not yet clear. And maybe we need to work more on that. Because whether this will generate sufficient revenues for the PDO and PDOA on the one hand, and whether the telco, who is supposed to provide the backhaul, would have an incentive to go into these arrangements. In the past, our experience has not been perfect. Because, for example, we have the whole issue of MVNOs in India, which basically are resellers of bandwidth again. And there we have found that the telcos have not really been that keen to work with the people lower down the chain. So there, I think our regulators would need to work more carefully to ensure that it is in everybody's interest to take this forward.
All right, so two specific concerns that are raised by Mr. Uppal. Mr. Ramchand, one, how do we ensure competitive prices? And two, how do we ensure that the interest of smaller players, that is protected? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, in India, the tariff is regulated by TRAI. Right now, it is on, it's open to the market, and it is on forbearance. We expect that the bulk bandwidth being taken by the PDOs, the TSPs will be giving some discounts, because the Wani network is, I feel, is not a competition to the telecom service providers. It is actually supplementing their network. Basically, it's offloading the radio network onto the Wi-Fi. So the TSPs would definitely benefit. They will be able to serve more customers with the same spectrum that they hold. And at the same time, they will be able to sell the bandwidth to the PDOs in bulk at a discounted rate. And the small PDOs, they should be able to buy the bandwidth at a cheaper rate than is normally available, and then provide the services. So I think it would be a win-win situation.
All right, so we do hope that it becomes a win-win situation for all. But we were also talking about entrepreneurship. Now, Mr. Uppal, through this initiative, a boost in ease of doing business would be given to the entrepreneurs. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also said that this scheme will revolutionize the tech world. What does this step mean for the tech startups in India?
Well, clearly it is an opportunity because, as Mr. Ramchand rightly mentioned, I mean, all these PDOs will have access to a whole lot of apps that the tech world will create and help support and maintain for them. Because remember, we are talking about a rural entrepreneur who may or may not have the necessary technical skills. So that person, he or she, will need some support, and also all the apps and all the other technical support that they need. So to that extent, I think it's very, it is a plus for the tech world.
All right,
and,
so that was
as
for
I
the
said,
tech world.
Yes,
sir. Please go ahead.
And the entrepreneurs, certainly, I think it is given that rural areas are starved of opportunity, especially entrepreneurial opportunities, and also starved of opportunities that they value, in the sense of, this is not simple manual work. This is something which is actually a value addition of a certain kind, which is attractive, as indeed we saw when the PCOs that Mr. Ramchand mentioned of 30 years ago. So yes, these are great things. My limited point is that there are some kinks that we need to even out.
And also, I'd like to elicit the views on the e-commerce industry and consumers. Mr. Ramchand, what will PM-Wani scheme mean for e-commerce industry and particularly the consumers in India?
Yeah, this proliferation of internet services across the country will definitely improve the e-commerce business also in the country. And not only e-commerce, there are other facilities or features that the semi-urban and rural population can access. That is tele-education, video calls, and as I mentioned earlier, work from home or work from anywhere. So it is this setup, this infrastructure with a backbone of optical fiber reaching all the villages will definitely give a boost to all supporting industries like e-commerce and as tele-education, as well as every other sector which depends on telecommunications.
So PM-Wani is going to be a power transmissive digital platform to empower ordinary citizens. Closing comments from both my guests. Mr. Uppal?
I broadly agree with Mr. Ramchand, and there is no doubt, as he alluded, telecommunications is now central to almost every sector of the economy. So anything that can expand broadband is something we should welcome, and its impact on the productivity is well understood, and we should welcome that. As I said, given that this is given its goals, and given the fact that the PM's own name is or his designation is attached to this, we hope that there will be an incentive for other little problems that exist with this to be solved by the regulators and also the Department of Telecoms that Mr. Ramchand so ably leads. Yeah.
So we need to address the gaps. Mr. Ramchand, closing comments.
Yeah, I would say that today we are having access to the internet services through public Wi-Fi in very limited places like hotels or airport lounges. With this scheme, we expect to see a lot more public Wi-Fi hotspots. I would, in the end, list three major advantages of this scheme. One is increased penetration of broadband internet services, especially in rural areas and semi-urban areas. Increased involvement of small entrepreneurs who come as PDOs and PDOS without getting licenses or all those complications of telecom regulations. Third is we hope it will give a big boost to Digital India mission by leveraging the infrastructure provided by the private TSPs as well as by the government through BharatNet and provide public Wi-Fi hotspots which can offer e-learning, e-governance, e-banking, e-health, and so many other services to both the central government as well as the state governments. Thank you.
All right, so it will ensure ease of living. On that note, thank you so much for joining us. And as the government says, availability and use of broadband will enhance incomes, employment, quality of life, and ease of doing business. That's all we had for you in this edition of Policy Watch. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.